did any ranching or anything. He was into trucking, and that's what we did. But in the early 2000, I bought my little ranch in Crane and Upton County. I'd always wanted property. Used to probably sneak on the Bill's property to shoot dove around a tank or something. I know we did up around north of town. Back in those days, nobody had gates, they just had cattle guards. And as long as you didn't screw anything up, the rancher usually didn't care if you went out there to chase a bird around or something, or at least they didn't catch us. But anyway, if you don't mind me talking about Crane and Upton County for just a second, the ranch we bought over there has a little history to it I thought you might get a kick out of. There's a place on the ranch called Castle Gap, and that's between Castle Mountain and King Mountain. There's about a mile-long gap running through there, and that not so much because of the gap, but because it lined up with a place about 14 miles to the west called Horsehead Crossing, and that was where supposedly it was the Comanche War Trail, when in the fall the Comanche would come through that country and go into Mexico to do what they did down there. They stole cattle and children and women and horses and whatever, and they'd bring them back up into central Texas. But because that was a kind of a well-known path across the ranch, the Butterfield stage line and the Pony Express also used that as a southern route coming across the ranch. There's been lots of artifacts found on the ranch, but probably one of the most interesting stories about it, there's 8 legends of gold. You were talking about there's no gold out here, and I've never found it over there either, but the biggest legend was Maximilian's treasure. In 1867, he was on the way out. He knew they were going to kill him down there in Mexico, and supposedly legend has it that he sent his gold out in numerous wagons, and it came through the across Horsehead Crossing and into Castle Gap, headed into central Texas, trying to get it to Galveston to go back to Europe, where he was from. That was when the Austrians ran Mexico. And anyway, at some point, legend has it that they knew the Comanches were in that area, around the Gap area and all, so they hired some ex-Confederates that they ran into around Horsehead Crossing to try to give them safe passage through the Gap and into central Texas. And again, as legend has it, the ex-Confederates realized there was more to those wagons than the so-called flour and the different things that were supposedly in there, that the wagons were much too heavy. They found out it was full of gold. They killed all 21 people that was trying to run those wagons to Galveston. And again, supposedly they buried the gold in the Castle Gap area. They took what they could carry and they left. They burned the wagons, to try to hide any sign of the wagons or the gold. And evidently, again, this is a legend, but they all but one was killed by the Comanches. One was badly wounded, was taken to a man by the name of Dr. Black, I believe, and later died, but in the process told this Dr. Black of the buried treasure. And about a year later, he was able to put together a little expedition to go after the gold. They got into the Castle Gap area. They found the burned wagons or the remnants of it, but they never found the gold. So to this day, people are still trying to get on the ranch, to get up there, to dig the gold. There's been numerous digs over the years, and as far as we know, nobody's ever found anything. If they did, they didn't tell anybody. When people ask me about it, I tell them that, yeah, I found it and my wife has already spent it. But I've had people call up and go, hey, would you like to sell the ranch? I don't know. Why? And they said, well, we know where the gold is, and if you'll let us come on your ranch and find the gold, then we'll have the money to buy your ranch. I thought that was a little odd. But anyway, that same path through there, the old Butterfield stage line, and all through the gap and over to Horsehead Crossing, was also the early route of the Goodnight Loving Trail. It came through the gap, well, you know that. Came across because the main thing they had to come down through there is because Horsehead Crossing was one of the few places on the Pecos that was readily passable, forgeable. So anyway, they came through there, and we all know those stories of Lonesome Dove. You've probably seen that. That was kind of loosely based on Goodnight and Loving. But since those cattle were the first ones that came across that area, the cows that we bought are all CTLR registered Longhorns. And they're supposedly from the same bloodlines that Goodnight and Loving drove across that country. But anyway, I thought that was always kind of an interesting story. I know it's not Winkler County.
Well, this is all surrounding counties too.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah, this is great.
But anyway, that's always been kind of an interesting story. I hope y'all found it.
Yes.
Real interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
I heard a great old thing about it.